You're listening to Over Your Head, a Butch Walker for the fans, by the fans podcast.
Hey, Butch Walker fans, and welcome to Over Your Head, a Butch Walker podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and joining me on our first episode just a little later will be my wife, Lauree, who will be helping me move things along just a little bit. I want to just say, first of all, this podcast is about Butch Walker. We all know Butch Walker. We all know what he's done in his career, and this podcast is about him. But for the most part, it is about you, the Butch Walker fans. We want to hear your stories and personal experiences. If you have a story that you want to share with us, you can email us at theoveryourheadpodcast@gmail.com. It can be a story about whatever you want. It can be how you discovered Butch, the first time you met Butch, the first time you introduced somebody who had never heard of Butch before to Butch Walker's music and what their reaction was. It can be an experience you had at a Butch Walker concert. It can be a story about a song or an album and how it had an impact or touched your life in some kind of way. This podcast is about you, the fans, and I want it to be very interactive, and your feedback is very special to us. I plan on having weekly polls up on the Over Your Head podcast Facebook page to find out what you want us to talk about. You can also follow the Over Your Head podcast on Twitter at BWalkerFan. Each week will be a different topic, but we are always going to try to incorporate some kind of personal story or experience into the episode. We hope you enjoy the podcast, and we hope you keep coming back for future episodes, because we know it's just going to get better and better, especially with your participation. Being that this is the first episode of the Over the Head podcast, we don't really have a lot of listener stories because we don't have a lot of listeners yet. So, joining me right now is my lovely wife. Say hello.
Hi.
And she is going to kind of listen to me talk and walk me through my journey as a Butch Walker fan and kind of help me tell my story of where I am coming from. And I'm a very private person when it comes to my life, and I'm going to kind of put it all out there.
This is true.
And just let you guys know how I became a Butch Walker fan and, you know, some experiences I've had as a Butch Walker fan.
Or how you got me to be.
Oh, yeah, and how I've got her to be a Butch Walker fan, because she knew nothing of Butch Walker until we met. I first discovered Butch Walker probably back around 1998 when he was in the Marvelous Three. And I didn't actually discover Butch. I was dating a girl, and I was going through her CD wallet one day in her car while we were driving around. And if you don't remember what a CD wallet is, it's
you young bucks out
It was a
you
little.
Guys
It was
what
a
CD is?
It was a CD. It was a CD wallet, and it had a bunch of CDs in it. Right now, cell phones talking is supposed to be dangerous. Try stumbling through your CDs while you're driving, trying to find the CD to put in the CD player.
While you're driving.
Exactly. So, anyways, I'm going through her CD wallet, and I'm looking through the general CDs: Poison, Motley Crue, Godsmack, and she had an interesting collection.
Well-rounded.
Yeah, and I see this just silver disc, and it says Marvelous 3 on it, and says, "Hey, album." So I ask, "Hey, what's the CD?" And she goes, "Oh, that's just music you can fall asleep to." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So at that time, I wasn't willing to say, "No, stick that in the CD player, we're listening to it." So I just said, okay, it's probably a throwaway disc of a band she bought that wasn't worth anything. So anyways, so that relationship did end.
Thank God.
Yeah, but fast forward about 3 years, and I am in another relationship, and I'm married.
Not with me.
Yeah,
No.
I'm married at this point, and the relationship is just bad. We were together a while, but then as soon as we got married, she just turned into it was a big mistake. So one day I just up and left, filed for divorce, and left with pretty much my CD collection.
In a CD calendar.
Yeah, in a CD wallet. And so anyways, so one day I was working downtown at the time, and I used to go out lunch, and I'd go to the local CD store.
They still had those?
Yeah, they still had CD stores at that time. And it was a Sam Goody. Yeah. It was the National Record Mart had closed at that point, but we still had a Sam Goody. And I would usually walk through, and I usually never had a lot of money to buy anything.
For all you young people, it's like the iStore, iTunes. That's what a Sam Goody was.
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, so I was just perusing CDs, and it had been years since there used to be a time when you'd buy a record or a CD just because you were walking past and you were like, oh my God, that artwork is so cool.
Right.
And, I don't care what the band sounds like. I'm just buying it. So I'm going through along, and I made it to the M's, I guess, and I see the CD, and it has a little M3 symbol in the top corner, and there's a mannequin on the cover in a very provocative pose, and I'm like, that looks interesting. So I picked it up, and I turned it over, and I started to just read the song titles, and the song titles sounded cool, so I bought the CD, not knowing anything about it. And it never even clicked that years before I had
seen that same CD.
I had the previous CD in my hands. So I took it home, put it in my CD player, because digital downloads did not exist. And I don't think it left my CD player for months. I played it over and over and over on repeat. It was kind of like...
Was it like a therapy session for you?
I think so. It was kind of like therapy. I was in a very bad place, a very dark place. I had lots of thoughts because, I was young. My marriage just ended. I thought that was it. I thought that was my life. And from that moment forward, there was going to be nothing. So it was like when you listen to a song and you say, hey, they wrote that song for me. That's how I felt about that album. It was like they wrote that album for me.
They even know my name.
Yeah, I was like, that album is my album. No one gets this album. This is my album. I get it. It's mine. So, of course, learning about the album and loving that album, I, go online, and I decide I'm going to start researching the band. I want to find out everything there is to know about this band. And so I go online, and I pull up their website, and I forget how they referred to it, if it was a memo or an important notice. It was like a bulletin, and it was announcing the band was breaking up.
Oh, no.
And it was like a punch to the gut. I was like, I found this great thing.
Now I get divorced
And
twice.
yeah, it was basically like going through a second divorce all of a sudden. So, but at that moment, I'm still researching, and I see that the lead singer of this band is doing a solo career, and he had just released a solo album called Left to Self-Centered. So I immediately, I couldn't find it anywhere. So, okay, I'm going to be completely honest here. Oh, what was that called where you got CDs in the mail?
Columbia House.
Oh, yeah, Columbia House.
You got them for a penny. And
Yeah.
Then you decided
yeah,
never
then
to
you
pay
never
them.
paid. You know, you got your 12 CDs.
And you used everybody's name in your household.
Yeah, pretty much. So anyways, so I know as I went through the Columbia House catalog, that album was in there, along with the first Marvelous 3 album, the second Marvelous 3 album.
That you
So
didn't get to
I
hear.
pretty much got my whole Marvelous 3 collection out of the Columbia House catalog. And I think Columbia House pretty much died right after that. So, you know, I got it at a good point.
Yeah, I think it finally came off my record.
Yeah. But so anyways, so I got Left to Self-Centered, and oh my God, that album was the same thing as Ready, Sex, Go. It was just, it was just awesome. And I, once again, it spoke to me, and I felt like, you know, it sounded a little bit like the Marvelous 3, and everything was great, and I just loved it. And so I was back on top again. I was out of the dark place. So at that point,
what song was it that really hit you?
That
That really like pulled you out of that dark place. Like, oh yeah.
Take Tomorrow One Day at a Time was really my song. That was, you would have thought it would have been one of the more upbeat songs, but really that song was the song. And I played that song to death. And just because now that when I listen to that song, I can give it about 800 meanings of what that song could be about. But for me, all the words meant something else, and it was just for
personal.
me.
It was
yes,
personal.
it was
It was
very
like it was
personal
written for you.
Yeah.
Like a letter for you.
Yeah.
Like, Dear Brian.
So the funny part is, also when I was researching online, I was trying to find if I could see Butch Walker in concert, and he was doing like a solo tour, and
remember, there's no YouTube at this point.
yeah, and he came here a week before I started researching.
Dang.
But luckily, he came back, and he did the opening for the Hard Rock Cafe, which I did not get to go to. But he shortly after that started doing his solo acoustic tour, and he came back to the Hard Rock, and I got 2 tickets. Couldn't find anybody to go with me, so I dragged my sister. And at that point, a lot of the songs for the Letters album were floating around on Napster and, you know, music sharing services. So
like pirating.
yeah,
crap.
so you were able to like get like bootleg versions of the songs. So you knew a lot of the songs, because when we got there, I thought it was awesome, because it was like my, you know, not being the most religious person in the world, it was a religious experience to me.
Is Butch your higher power?
Yes. Butch is the higher power. It was like a religious experience to me. My sister referred to it as a cult.
I can see her saying that.
Because everybody was singing along, knew every word. The album, I don't think, was even out yet.
Well,
but
that's because she didn't know.
yeah,
music
but
and didn't know that.
but she considered it a cult. I consider it, and hey, I was cool with that. That's a cult I would sign up for any day of the week. But anyways,
Your Butch juice.
so it was Butch fast forward completely from then on. It was nothing Butch was all I listened to. And the Letters album, when it finally came out, I thought it was the most perfect album in the world. And that album gave me some of my best Butch Walker moments.
Give me an example.
A friend of mine, Butch went on tour with Avril Lavigne and was opening for Avril. So me and a friend of mine drove to Cleveland, which is a good 2.5 hours away, depending who's driving.
And how sober you are.
Yes, and we went to see Butch. We left work. We got to where Butch was playing and Avril was playing. We walked in the door. The minute we sat in our seats, Butch hit the stage. It couldn't have been timed any more perfect.
He waited for you.
Because we got lost for like 20 minutes, which took 20 minutes off our time. So, anyway, so after Butch finished, he was going to be doing a meet and greet out in the lobby of the little arena. We were like, oh, that's great. We'll go meet him. And, but it wasn't like the meet and greets he would do at his normal shows, I guess, where he would come out and talk to people and sign things. And they had him behind a curtain at a table. They had someone telling you, look, he's only going to sign one thing, keep it moving. And it was like, oh, okay, so it's going to be like a cattle call. So, which I know wasn't his decision, but it was probably the venues. But anyways, at that point, you figure you had all these little teenagers that didn't even know who he was. They were there for Avril Lavigne. And you had like some of us diehard Butch fans at that point in line, because we all found each other somehow. And
they're the same faces you see today.
Yeah. And then you had little kids trying to cut you in line. And, you know, and at that point, I was not ready to fight a little kid, but I was old enough. I was not afraid to get security and tell on them.
And their mama too.
Yes. But anyways, so we get in there and we go up, walk through, and we get to Butch, and it's like yabba yabba yabba. Yeah. And I didn't know what to say, and so I handed him my Letters CD, and I said, could you please sign this for me? And I just want to tell you, you know, how, you know, much I love your music, and it's made a huge impact on me. And because they're kind of shoveling you through and you didn't have a lot of time to talk. And he goes, yeah. Who do you? What's your name? Who do you want me to make it out to? And I said, Diane.
Which is your mom's name.
Yes. My mom really wanted to go to the show, but she wasn't able to. So I had him sign the CD for her. And I figured maybe at some point in life I'd get a chance to have him sign something for me. But that just wasn't the time. I wanted something for my mom. And so I got him to sign the CD for my mom. And
didn't he call your mom?
And I just thought it was so, he thought he was like grinning from ear to ear, like he couldn't believe, like, you're having me sign this and it's for your mom, which I'm sure he could believe. And he was like, well, your mom must be very special if you're, you know, doing this. And so anyways, so let me try to think. So my mom did get to see Butch once. She got to see him at a local club here in Pittsburgh. And but after that, her legs started to get bad, and she couldn't go to really concerts where he stood anymore. And so I went to see Butch one time, and he came out afterwards and was talking to everybody, taking pictures like he does. And I called my mom on the phone and said, you know, we're going to be leaving, but I'm here with Butch. And I had been talking to Butch for a few minutes. I said, he's going to say goodnight to you. And she immediately says, quit jerking me around. She's like, I want to go to bed. So I hand the phone to Butch, and Butch, I can't remember what song, but Butch sang a couple lines of a song to her. Aww. And he said that he hoped she had a great night and told her to have sweet dreams. Aww. And at this point, it seemed like everything I was doing was for Butch, was for my mom. But meanwhile, it was like Butch had the impact mainly on my life. But once my mom heard him, my mom fell in love with him too.
Your mom has the biggest music impact on you, period. She took you to your first concert. This was something that you bonded with your mom with anyway.
Correct. So anyways, Butch was going to be playing in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I had no one to go with, and I didn't have a car at the time. And I was like, I have to get to Harrisburg. He was going to be playing a small place. And I said, I got to get up there. So I went, bought a Greyhound ticket.
Is that your first and only Greyhound?
That was my first and only Greyhound. And so I bought a Greyhound ticket, and I had, let's see what I had on me. I had like $30 cash, a Twix, and my ticket home. And that was pretty much it. I was afraid to take like an actual wallet. I think I did have my ID on me. But so went up there and, saw Butch. It was a great show, but it was such a small, intimate show that afterwards he came outside and we were by his tour bus and everything. And we got to really talk and actually have a conversation. And the one thing that I love to this day about Butch is the fact that no matter how many times you go see him, if you stick around afterwards and he comes out to talk to fans and stuff, he remembers you and he knows you. And it's like it's one big family, and it's like you haven't seen your cousin or your sister or brother for a long time. And he's like, hey, I know you, and you did this or you did this, and that's what it felt like. But I got to talk to him for about 10-15 minutes before I had to jump back on that crappy Greyhound home. And I really got to tell him how he pulled me out of a dark place. And I got to tell him what I went through and, which songs that I felt, pulled me out of that and what he did for me. And he just, he just seemed really happy that I was still with us to be able to enjoy the music he was making.
Well, I think, artists always like to hear that story. Like, if you could affect one person and make their life a better life.
Correct.
Everything was worth it. And he's that type of guy.
Yeah, he is definitely that type of guy. There's always that saying, you always are scared to meet your heroes or your, the people you look up to because, what if they're a jerk? Right. And, it was always my biggest fear meeting him, to have a talk with him, because, hey, don't get me wrong, he's a sarcastic ass. And, but hey, I am too, so I'm cool with that, but he's one of the most genuine people in the world. If you've met him, that he is. Don't be afraid to meet him because he's humble. He's, he turns into a completely different person than the wild animal he is on stage.
Yeah, but he still retains that personality. And part of that is always going to be on the stage, but he becomes, I don't know, every ordinary person when you meet him in person.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to wait around sometimes for an hour or two afterwards.
Yeah.
But he will come out and he will talk to you. And it's really a great thing.
But that is pretty much where I want to leave my story at, I think. Because I'm probably going to share many experiences I've had on different episodes of this podcast.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because I've had so many. I've had so many funny stories. I've had I think I've only had one bad experience at a Butch concert.
And that was just recently.
And that was just recently.
But it had nothing to do with Butch.
It had nothing to do with Butch,
do
and
with
it did not ruin the concert.
Yeah, absolutely. But I still have the scar, look.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure I'm going to have other stories to tell. I was pulled on stage by Butch one time, which was a great moment.
It was for you, but it wasn't so much for me.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because
you didn't read his lips.
But no. So yeah. And it wasn't for. I wasn't pulled on stage for one of those times where he had people coming up to sing.
No,
the people he pulled up to come to sing, they were able to sing. That was their place. That's not my place. I would never volunteer to come up to sing. But anyways.
But it was over the T-shirt you were wearing.
Yeah, I was. He got a kick out of the fact that I was wearing a South Gang T-shirt, and it had the pictures of them from back in the day on it. So, yeah, I'm gonna wrap up my story now, and I'm gonna turn things over to my wife, and she is going to tell we actually got a listener story to tell. It's a short story, but that's what we want you guys to do on here, is we want you to send in your stories and experiences. So I'm going to turn things over to her.
Well, I kind of want to share something.
Oh, my wife would like to share a story.
I would like to share a story because, this isn't just about you. It's about your listeners, and I'm a listener. I just listen to you. So my first experience for Butch was when we first started dating. Now, I'm going to take you all back to that CD thing. Yeah, they were no longer tapes. Now, tapes, went into a cassette player, a Walkman, or whatever.
I'm pretty sure people know this.
Well, he made me in quotations mixtape on a CD, and he would keep making me these, and I didn't realize why he was calling them mixtapes. And then I heard the song and I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm getting a mixtape. But that's what really, he would put Butch songs throughout it. It wasn't all Butch, but he put it throughout the whole thing. I was like, who is this? I really like it. And he would play the entire CD for me over and over and over and over again. And he would tell me, I was feeling this in the moment, and this is why it affected me. But I was thinking, you know what? I'm hearing this song, but I'm getting a totally different message because it spoke to me too. And
let me just say, up until this point, when I brought Butch into Lauree's life, I refused to bring Butch into any relationship because I did not want anything to ever taint Butch for me. And I didn't want to say, to a girl, that's your song. And, say the song Don't Move, that's about you. And that's my song for you. And
you still haven't done that.
We break up, and a year later, I'm blasting the CD, and Don't Move comes on. I'm like, that freaking
But there is that one song for you that you did associate with us.
Yes, that's correct. But I planned on this one. I planned on our relationship lasting.
Well, that was the whole point, right?
Yeah.
That was the whole point. This was a few years into our relationship. Now, I have 2 daughters from a previous relationship, and they, lived with me. And it's Christmas morning, and he says, this is your Christmas present. I open up, it's a CD. I'm like, what the heck is this? So we put it in.
It was a DVD.
Play. It was a DVD, but it didn't play. So I ended up putting it on the TV. Was it on the TV? I don't know. It was, yeah. And then all of a sudden it was Promise, right?
Yeah, it was the song
Promise. And all this slideshow of all these pictures throughout the beginning of our relationship till where it is now. And I'm so moved by it. My daughters are there. My mom is there. My sister's there. And I'm tearing up. And then at the end, there was this picture of a ring. and it said, "Will you marry me?" And I'm getting choked up because that really was one of the best moments of my life. And I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all. My older daughter, like, nudged me and said, "Mom, answer him." I'm like, oh my gosh. So that was like the best Butch moment for me, other than not being at a concert. It was how you did that with the whole, this is our life so far. And, you know, that was a good moment.
Well, I reached my goal. First episode, someone started to tear up, and it wasn't me. So, you know, I figured that's a good episode. But I figured I'd be the one crying at this point. But anyways, I'm going to turn it over to Lauree, and she's going to tell the listener story that we got.
It's a great story.
That someone sent us. It's a short story, but it's a really good one.
It's a really good story.
And I'm going to turn things over to her.
Our story of the week was sent to us from Brian Camp on the Over Your Head Facebook page. He writes, "Back during the Marvelous 3 days, there was a Ready, Sex, Go CD release party at Best Buy. Grant Park was a song on the record, but not on the radio yet. I downloaded it, and my 7 and 8-year-olds had learned all the words. So we're in Best Buy getting autographs, and the kids tell Butch they want to sing for him. They sang it, and all of the Best Buy was listening. Butch had the biggest grin on his face. It was so awesome. That had to have been the most greatest daddy moment ever." These are exactly the kind of stories we want here on this podcast. If you would like to send your story to be featured on a future episode, you can email us at the overyourheadpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, Brian Camp. We enjoyed that story so much that we want to play all of you a little song. Here is Grant Park.
A shop in Grant Park. You can walk through the door and shove the knife in her heart when you tell her that you can't stand the song anymore. The one you two adopted on the prom dance floor. You can be a Tom Cruise and make a big scene. I'll be like MacGyver and cut it clean. Either way, there's gonna be blood on the floor when you tell her that you don't dig girls anymore. Named Jed, yeah, caught his girlfriend with a woman in bed, and they were watching Love Live with a bottle of wine. I've had a party like it's 1999. So we flew down the movies and he had a heart attack. He jumped in the ocean, he never swam back. They just stood there naked, except for the socks. Feed him cheaper than a prize and a Cracker Jack box. I don't think Jed's really gonna wanna rock you with that's about as tacky as a satellite dish on a hot pink house with a burgundy door, with cigarette butts all over the floor. Don't think my stomach's gonna take it anymore.
Hey, welcome back to the Over Your Head podcast. Another thing I want to do on this podcast each week is to take a moment to acknowledge an independent artist that we as fans think fit into the Butch Walker world. It could be an unknown band or singer, or it can be a local band from your area. If you yourself are in a band and would like to be featured on the podcast, just send a bio and a song you would like played to the Over Your Head podcast at gmail.com, and it can be featured on a future episode. For the first episode of the Over Your Head podcast, I would like to feature a local band from my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Chip and the Charge-Ups are pretty new to the Pittsburgh music scene, but their band members are not. Led by Chip Demonic, who has been a staple in Pittsburgh's local music scene for years, this new project is a mix of power pop, pop rock with a punk influence. A lot of the songs have a Butch Walker or Marvelous 3 feel to them. I know Butch is a huge influence in their writing. I had the privilege and honor of getting to attend their sold-out CD release party just a few weeks ago, and we're going to be playing a song off of their debut CD right now, Flow of the Current, Part 1. And that song is entitled Front Row. We hope you enjoy.
Wanna know why I'm so charged up? My favorite band's rolling into town. Filthy pennies and crunched up dollars. Bought this ticket, time to get unwound. If music's your reason to be, makes you feel so wild and free. Grab your boots and get ready to hang with me. Drums right in my chest. Need the magic that pops when eyes meet. Doesn't count if I ain't drenched in sweat. Loud music's my reason to be. Makes me feel so wild and free. Throw some horns if you wanna rock out with me. Meet me in the front row at the punk rock show. It's where we're born to go. Meet me in the front row. We'll sing ba 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 ba. When the crowd gets loud, there's only one place to be. When the lights go down, you know just where to find me. Meet me in the front row at the punk rock show. It's where we're born to go. Meet me in the front row. Meet me in the front row at the punk rock show. It's where we're born to go. Meet me in the front row. We'll sing ba 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 ba. We'll scream ba 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 ba.
That was Chip and the Charge-Ups, the Over Your Head Artist of the Week, with Front Row off of their debut CD, Flow of the Current, Part 1. If you would like to learn more about Chip and the Charge-Ups, you can go to their website at chargeups.com, or you can find them on Facebook at facebook.com/thechargeups. They also have a Patreon at patreon.com/thechargeups, where you get a lot of cool incentives for joining. And they also have a fan page at facebook.com/thefrontrowchargeupfans. If you would like to see your band or an artist you think needs to be discovered by Butch Walker fans, once again, send your suggestions to the overyourheadpodcast@gmail.com.
I won't say that. I never say that out loud. I sense I know the truth.
Well, that's a wrap for the first episode of the Over Your Head podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed putting it on for you. I just expect every episode to keep getting better and better, especially with your feedback and participation. I hope you guys are as excited as I am about the future of this podcast. And remember, you can email any ideas or suggestions to the overyourheadpodcast@gmail.com. You could also find us on Facebook at the Over Your Head Podcast Facebook page. And if you want to send us a tweet, you can do that at Over Your Head Podcast on Twitter at BWalkerFan. I just want to send a quick thank you out to everybody who has sent their support into me and who has contributed to our GoFundMe page, as there are costs that go into putting on a podcast like this. If you're interested in contributing, you can head over to the Facebook page and just follow the links. Thank you for listening, and remember, this is your podcast. I just want to send a special thank you out to my wife for helping me through this podcast and for contributing. This is Brian, and I just want to say, in the words of Butch Walker, take tomorrow one day at a time.